My boyfriend took his ex on the romantic vacation I had spent 2 years saving for. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I simply disappeared, with the key to a secret that could destroy him. He always saw me as just another clingy girlfriend, but when the hotel staff called me Madam Chairwoman, his illusion cracked into pieces. I had been planning that trip for nearly 2 years. I created a hidden folder full of resort options, travel guides, restaurant menus, and handwritten notes about all the places Ethan once said he dreamed of visiting. It was meant to be a surprise for his birthday, something unforgettable. I even picked up extra freelance work, skipped nights out with friends, and cut corners wherever I could to make it happen. I believed I was building a memory for the two of us. I didn't realize I was just laying out a luxury vacation for 2 people, one of whom wouldn't be me. Ethan always claimed he hated surprises. So I waited until a week before the trip to tell him. I'll never forget how his face lit up when I handed him the envelope with all the bookings. "You did this for me?" he asked, genuinely shocked. I nodded, smiling like an idiot, thinking I'd done something special. He hugged me and said it was the sweetest thing anyone had ever done for him. Then, just 3 days before we were supposed to leave, he said he couldn't go, something urgent had come up, he claimed. I asked questions, naturally. He got defensive, said I was being controlling. I apologized, like I always did. He told me I should go alone, but the way he said it didn't feel like a suggestion, it felt like a dare. I quietly cancelled my time off, told him I understood, and even packed up a little gift bag I'd made for him. Travel-sized cologne, sunscreen, and a handwritten note full of our private jokes. I left it on his desk. The day of the trip came. I stayed home, still trying to convince myself he might have had a legitimate emergency. I told myself not to check my phone, but I did, and everything shattered. Her name was MIA, his ex, the one he'd sworn was ancient history, the one who had cheated on him in college, the one he told me meant nothing. There she was, on my feed, 2 glasses of wine, a golden sunset in the background, and the unmistakable view from the very resort I had booked. The caption read, "When he surprises you with your dream vacation, palm tree # blessed." My stomach dropped. I zoomed in on the photo, the palm trees, the ocean view, the towels with the embroidered initials I had specially requested. Every detail screamed my plan. For a split second, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it was a coincidence, maybe she booked the same place, maybe he didn't know. But then came the next photo, him, shirtless, arm wrapped around her, both of them beaming. And the next, a boomerang of them clinking drinks at the poolside bar, the same bar I had called ahead to request his favorite cocktail be waiting. Everything I had lovingly planned was now being enjoyed by the 2 people who had lied to me. I felt sick, but I didn't fall apart. I didn't cry, I didn't even scream. I just stopped. I turned off my phone, sat in silence, and let the numbness spread. Then, I opened my laptop and logged into the booking system. I had arranged everything through my business account, something Ethan didn't even know existed. The resort, the airport pickup, the dinner reservations, all of it was in my name. I quietly cancelled the pre-authorized credit card and removed his name from all reservation notes. No drama, no posts, no rage-filled calls, just silence. I packed a small bag, left a note on our shared dresser that read, "Don't worry about the rent this month. I won't be staying here anymore." I didn't take everything, just the essentials, my laptop, some clothes, my ID, and my dignity. I walked out like I was going to run an errand, and I never turned back. For 3 days, I checked into a hotel under a different name. I didn't contact anyone. I kept my phone on airplane mode. I drank hotel coffee, took long, hot showers, and stared at the ceiling. I thought about all the times he made me feel small, all the moments I brushed off, when he called me too sensitive, when he forgot our anniversary but remembered the date MIA dumped him. I remembered asking him once what he'd do if he ever saw her again. He said, "I'd walk away and thank God you were in my life instead." What a liar. By the 4th day, curiosity got the better of me. I turned my phone back on, bracing for chaos. There were a few texts. "Hey, hope you're okay. Me and MIA are at the resort. Weirdest thing. My card didn't work. Are you mad? You're being dramatic. Call me." I didn't respond. What was there to say? He had made his choice. and for once, I didn't feel like fighting to be seen. I had always been the one who planned, who gave, who fixed things. He had been the one who took, who received, who made promises with no intention of keeping them, and now he had taken the last thing I had held on to, the trip I dreamed of, and handed it to the one person he once swore he'd never return to, in the quiet of that hotel room, surrounded by white walls and the faint scent of shampoo. I made a new decision. I opened an old email I had ignored for months. It was a job offer, from a luxury hotel chain overseas, a management position, temporary at first, but with the potential to grow. I had turned it down originally, because Ethan didn't want me abandoning our future, but now, there was no future left to abandon. I hit reply. I'm interested. When can I start? They answered within hours. The previous manager had stepped down early, and they urgently needed someone to start as soon as possible. All expenses paid, including temporary housing. I could choose any of the chain's locations to begin training. For the first time in days, I smiled. I chose Bali, the same island where Ethan was currently savoring the last bits of the trip I had meticulously planned for us. It wasn't about revenge, it was about reclaiming my space. I didn't need to confront him to win, nor did I need to humiliate him. I had already won the moment I decided to stop giving him any more of my energy. Yet, part of me wondered how he would react when he realized the truth, that the woman he thought was quiet, harmless, and naive had been the one holding all the cards, that the hotel staff bowed when they saw me, that the suite he slept in was upgraded at my request, and that the wine he toasted with MIA had been selected from a list I had curated. I didn't hate him, that would have taken too much of my time. I simply erased him, like a typo in a long letter. A week later, I boarded the flight, with a new number, new job, and new apartment waiting for me. As the plane took off, I looked out the window and whispered a thank you to the version of me that finally chose herself, somewhere on that island. Ethan was probably still wondering why the staff no longer answered his calls, but that wasn't my concern anymore, because I wasn't just the girl who planned the trip. I was the woman who owned the resort. I didn't post anything online, update my status, or drop hints or leave vague quotes about heartbreak. I just disappeared. People noticed, though. A couple of friends texted me, asking if everything was okay. I gave short answers. I didn't feel like explaining. It wasn't their fault, and it wasn't their mess to clean up. Most of them knew Ethan as the funny guy, the smooth talker, the one who bought roses on random days. They didn't know about the cold silences, the emotional pressure, or the way he made me feel invisible whenever MIA was even mentioned. He had once told me I was overthinking things, that MIA was just a chapter long closed. I had wanted to believe him so badly that I forced myself to forget the way he paused whenever she came up, how he still had a playlist she made him, how he kept their old photos in a hidden folder he thought I didn't know about. I had pretended not to care because I was afraid that if I pushed too hard, I'd break something I couldn't fix. Turns out, it was already broken. I was just the last to know. I moved into a temporary apartment provided by the hotel company. It was smaller than what I was used to, but it was clean, quiet, and more importantly, mine. The view from the window showed the beach and the distant waves crashing into the shore. There was something peaceful about starting over in a place where no one knew my name. Well, almost no one. The regional director of the hotel chain, Mr. Tanaka, had been following my work for a while. I had done some consulting under a different name before, helping smaller resorts revamp their operations. It was supposed to be freelance, temporary, low-key, but Mr. Tanaka had somehow figured out my full background. He knew who my parents were and what company I came from. He was respectful about it. "You're more than just a legacy," he said during our first meeting. "You have a sharp mind and a good instinct for people. That's something you can't inherit." That compliment stayed with me longer than I expected. I had gotten used to being praised for being nice, for being supportive, for being chill. No one had ever complimented my instincts before. As part of my job, I had to do a full audit of the resort I selected as my starting location. It was the very same one Ethan and MIA had gone to, though they had checked out 2 days before I arrived. I didn't plan it that way, but I won't pretend I didn't feel relieved. I didn't want to see them. Not yet, not ever, if I could help it. Still, their presence lingered in the walls, staff remembered them. One of the front desk women, Taika, quietly asked me if I knew the loud couple from Suite 5C. I smiled and said no. She described MIA as demanding but fake sweet. And Ethan as charming but suspicious. I let her talk. She didn't know I was the one who booked that suite. She didn't know the reservation had originally been for a romantic couple's massage, a custom candlelit dinner, and a sunrise breakfast on the private balcony, all of which MIA had enjoyed. Not anymore. I redirected those experiences to other guests, newlyweds, parents on anniversary trips, a widow on her first solo vacation. Watching their faces light up brought me a quiet satisfaction I couldn't describe. I had poured my heart into those details, and now they were going to people who appreciated them. At night, I walked along the beach alone. The air smelled like salt and jasmine. My mind would sometimes wander to Ethan, but not in the way I expected. I didn't feel heartbreak, I felt embarrassment. I had given so much to someone who had offered me so little in return. I had shrunk myself, ignored red flags, and hoped that if I just gave more, loved harder, he would stay. Now I understood something deeply important. Staying isn't love, choosing you when no one is watching. That's love. He never chose me, not once. I started journaling again, something I hadn't done since college. My notebook quickly filled with sharp thoughts, memories, and short letters I'd never send. Some were to Ethan, some to myself, and some to the version of me that had allowed so much nonsense in the name of love. One night, while reviewing staff training footage, I stumbled upon a brief clip that made my stomach tighten. It was a recording from the pool area during the week Ethan and MIA had stayed. He was laughing, drink in hand, as MIA clung to his side like a vine. He looked happy, he looked free. I closed the laptop. I didn't need to see more, but the next morning, an email was waiting in my inbox. No subject line, no greeting, just a single sentence. Why didn't you tell me it was yours? It was from Ethan. I stared at the screen for a while. It was a short message, but it told me everything. Someone must have told him. Maybe the staff connected the dots, or maybe he overheard a conversation. Either way, it didn't matter now. He had taken me for granted. That was the truth. Whether he knew who I was or not didn't change the fact that he had betrayed me, lied, and I had left. I didn't reply. Another message came that afternoon. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you. I messed up. Then another. MIA meant nothing. It was a mistake. You're the only one I ever really loved. The messages kept coming. Apologies, excuses, confusion. At one point, he said he didn't even know why he took her, that he was drunk, lonely, and thought she was just easy company. He said he missed me, that everything reminded him of me, that he felt like a fool. I still didn't reply. Some things don't deserve answers. A week later, he sent one last message. I'll wait. Please talk to me when you're ready. Ready for what? To forgive, to explain why I walked away, to let him back in. I wasn't angry anymore, but I had no space left for him. He had been given chance after chance. I had chosen him again and again, and when it was time for him to choose me, he picked someone else. That kind of decision doesn't need a second look. I told the staff to block his number from the resort's line. I didn't want his name coming up in any guest interactions again. It wasn't long before people started noticing my work. Guests left glowing reviews. Corporate reached out to praise my management. They asked if I'd consider staying longer, maybe take on more responsibility. I said yes. A few days later, I got a call from Mr. Tanaka. We're having a shareholder meeting next month, he said. We'd love it if you could attend and speak. They're all very curious about the youngest woman to ever run one of our properties. I paused. Shareholder meeting. That would mean my name, my background, everything would be fully public. I had avoided the press so far, choosing to work quietly. But maybe it was time. Yes, I said, I'll be there. There was no more reason to hide. If Ethan hadn't recognized what he had when I was just Lee, the hardworking girlfriend, maybe he'd understand now that I was Lee Bennett, the woman who owned the very space he used to lie to me. That night, I took myself to dinner at the resort's most expensive restaurant. I wore a black dress, heels, and a calm expression. Alone, a staff member brought me a bottle of wine and smiled. Congratulations on your first month here, Madam Chairwoman, she said. I smiled back, "Thank you." I wasn't anyone's girlfriend now. I was the woman who disappeared and was just getting started. The shareholder meeting took place in Singapore at one of our flagship properties. I arrived in a fitted white suit, hair tied back, and heels that clicked like punctuation on marble floors. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I just wanted to feel sharp, like someone who had nothing to prove anymore. The boardroom was filled with mostly older men in expensive suits, a few women in tailored dresses, and a handful of younger department heads. Some smiled politely, some looked curious, and a few looked surprised. Most of them had only seen my name in internal reports. They didn't expect someone so young to be leading one of their top resorts. I gave a short presentation on how I had increased guest satisfaction, lowered refund rates, and introduced a new training model for staff. I mentioned the charity vacation packages and how they had gone viral, thanks to a military couple's emotional honeymoon story. What I didn't mention was that the suite given to that couple had originally been reserved for my ex-boyfriend and his ex-girlfriend. That part was for me alone. After the meeting, I shook hands, answered questions, smiled at the compliments, and walked out feeling lighter. For the first time, I felt seen for something other than being someone's partner, not as someone's daughter or someone's quiet girlfriend. 2 days later, I flew back to the island resort. The staff greeted me with warm smiles and fresh flowers. It felt like home. What I didn't expect was the front desk manager, Taika. Pulling me aside quietly after my return, "There's a guest asking for you," she said, lowering her voice. "He's been here for hours, no reservation. He said he's willing to wait as long as it takes." I knew who it was before she said his name. "Ethan." I took a slow breath. "Did he say why he's here?" Taika nodded. "He said he wanted to apologize, like he hasn't slept in days." Part of me wanted to ignore it, but something inside me whispered that this moment had to happen, not for closure, not for him, but for me. I told Tar to send him to the private garden lounge. I didn't want him anywhere near the guest spaces. When I walked in, I found him sitting on the edge of a wicker couch, head in hands. He looked up when he heard my footsteps. His face was thinner, eyes red, beard uneven, like he'd been shaving without caring. He stood up immediately. The morning of the exhibition, I received an unexpected message from Zoe that electrified the air around me. "Surprise. Just landed in Paris. Wild horses couldn't keep me from your big night. Send your address ASAP." Hours later, I found myself locked in an emotional embrace with my best friend in the midst of my quaint apartment, both of us oscillating between laughter and tears. "I can't believe you came all this way," I said, wiping away my tears. "Are you kidding? Your first gallery showing. I wouldn't miss it for the world," Zoe replied, her eyes scanning my apartment with an approving nod. "This place is so you, the real you. Before Lucas tried to reshape you into his perfect corporate wife." Her words struck a chord, reminding me of how much I had changed during my relationship with Lucas, sacrificing my passion for painting, adopting his tastes from food to furniture, and even altering my wardrobe to please him. "I have so much to tell you," I said, a wave of excitement washing over me. "But first, let's get ready for tonight." The gallery was a small, elegant space nestled on a charming side street in Montmartre. When Zoe and I arrived, it was already buzzing with an eclectic mix of people. Marcel, a friend, introduced me to Camille, the gallery owner. Her rapid French initially overwhelmed me, but she kindly switched to English when she noticed my struggle. "Your work has soul," she assured me earnestly. "It is not technically perfect, but it carries an emotion that can't be taught." As I wandered through the gallery, I was awestruck to see my paintings professionally displayed, each accompanied by a small card bearing my name. Zoe, ever the supportive friend, snapped countless photos, insisting I pose next to each piece. "Olivia Palmer, international artist," she declared with a flourish. "Lucas is going to be green with envy when he sees these on Instagram." I don't care about what Lucas thinks anymore, I realized aloud, and I truly meant it. As we enjoyed our champagne, Clet, another friend, arrived with an elegantly dressed older man, a longtime patron of her bookstore. They both admired my paintings, engaging me with thoughtful questions about my techniques and inspirations. After they moved on, Zoe nudged me excitedly. "That man just bought your painting. The one of the bookstore." Are you sure? I asked. My heart skipping a beat. I saw him talking to the gallery owner and pointing at it, then they put a red dot on the card. That means it's sold, right? By the end of the evening, 2 of my 3 paintings had sold. Camille, handing me another glass of champagne, toasted, to new beginnings, and to your next exhibition, which I hope will be here. Later that night, back at my apartment, Zoe and I sat on my bed, indulging in pastries and catching up on everything that had transpired over the past 3 months. You need to know something, Zoe said hesitantly. Lucas's sister, Sandra, contacted me last week. She's in Paris on business and asked if she could come to your exhibition. Why would she want to see me? I questioned, my stomach tightening. She says she wants to apologize, Zoe explained. Apparently, things aren't going well for Lucas. After you left, people started asking questions. Then he got back together with Madison, but she dumped him. His company passed him over for a promotion, and word got out about him canceling the wedding by text. I absorbed this information with a surprising detachment. Months ago, news of Lucas's misfortunes might have stirred satisfaction or pain, but now it felt like distant echoes of a life I no longer lived. Did she come tonight? I inquired. No, but she's still in Paris for 2 more days. I can tell her you're not interested if you want, Zoe offered. I considered for a moment. No, I'll meet her, not because of Lucas, but because Sandra was always kind to me. The next morning, I met Sandra at a cafe near the Louvre. She had Lucas's eyes and smile, but with a warmth he lacked. Thank you for seeing me, she began, after we ordered coffee. I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't, I admitted. I owe you an apology, she continued, her gaze earnest. I knew Lucas was seeing Madison before the wedding, and I said nothing. I told myself it wasn't my place to interfere. Why tell me now? I asked. Because I've seen what keeping secrets has done to our family, she explained. My father had affairs for years while my mother pretended not to notice. Lucas learned from their example that it's okay to deceive those you love. After Sandra left, I strolled through the Tuileries garden, reflecting on everything that had transpired since that life-altering text message 4 months ago. The shock and pain had faded, replaced by an unexpected gratitude. Lucas canceling our wedding had seemed like the end of my world, but it had actually been the beginning of a much better one. That evening, I received an email from Janet, my boss back home. What had started as a temporary remote work arrangement had evolved into a proposal for me to head a new Paris office. Think about it, Janet wrote. This could be permanent if you want it to be. The timing was uncanny. My initial 6-month visa would expire in 2 months. And I had been avoiding thinking about what came next, whether to return to my old life or find a way to stay in Paris. Now, standing at my apartment window, gazing out at the Paris rooftops bathed in sunset, I knew my answer. The woman who had arrived in Paris 4 months ago, heartbroken, angry, and lost, was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, braver, and happier. I opened my notebook and began a letter. Dear Lucas, thank you for canceling our wedding. It was the best gift you could have given me. I looked out the window where the ocean kissed the edge of the sky, soft waves stretching into the horizon like the world was gently exhaling. I wasn't trying to control anything anymore, I was just letting the story finish itself. That afternoon, I reviewed every detail connected to the presidential suite, the one I had once reserved for someone I loved. The spa appointment had been upgraded to a couples session, complete with awkwardly romantic background music. The chef's table was set for 2 under the reservation name Mr. and Mrs. Wells, which seemed fitting for a couple so eager to play house. But the real masterpiece, the welcome note, I rewrote it myself. To Mr. Wells and guest, we hope you enjoy the views, the silence, and the time to reflect on what really matters. Management. They checked in at exactly 3:00 p.m. I didn't go to the lobby, I didn't even watch the security feed. Instead, I sent the newest intern, a shy girl named Anna, to escort them upstairs. I told her it would be a good training experience. Ethan wouldn't recognize her, but I made sure she wore the company pin, gold, discreet, engraved with the hotel's Latin motto, Veritas post tenebras, truth after darkness. Hours passed without drama. It was almost boring in its quietness. Until just after 6 p.m., Ethan's name popped up on the staff line. Requesting a special seating arrangement at the beach deck restaurant, Anna answered politely and let him know the deck was fully booked. He insisted. She declined again. Moments later, a second call came. This time to the general manager. Ethan was now asking to speak directly with the owner. The GM texted me, "Mr. Wells says it's urgent, wants to speak to you." I replied simply, "Tell him the owner doesn't take calls after hours." 20 minutes later, a knock sounded on my office door. It was Anna again. "Sorry, Madam Bennett," she said nervously. "He's in the lobby. He wants to know where you are." I stood slowly, smoothed my blouse, and grabbed my room key. "Send him to the solarium," I said. That room had glass walls, warm lighting, and, intentionally, no cameras. I didn't want staff involved in what came next. When I walked into the solarium, he was already pacing, his footsteps restless on the marble floor. He turned at the sound of my heels and stopped short. As if he'd seen a ghost, he looked the same, but older somehow, like regret had carved out the edges of his face. Emma wasn't with him. Maybe she was still upstairs, or maybe she'd finally realized she was never the main character in this story. "Leah, it's Madam Bennett," I corrected. He blinked. "Right, sorry. I didn't think you'd actually come." "Then you shouldn't have booked a room in my house," I said, my voice flat. He exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "Look, I know what you must think, but I didn't come here to stir anything up. This wasn't my idea. MIA planned it, said it would be symbolic or something. I didn't even know this was your resort until we were already at the airport. And yet," I said, walking past him to pour myself a glass of water, "you still boarded the plane, you still checked in, you ordered wine, you called the front desk to demand special treatment, all while using a name you had no right to carry." He frowned. "That's not fair. I didn't mean for any of this to." "You didn't mean to," I interrupted. "You didn't mean to take the trip. You didn't mean to hurt me. You didn't mean to cheat. You didn't mean to come back. But here you are, like a stain I can't scrub out." He ran a hand through his hair. "Can we just talk, please? One real conversation. No titles, no hotel walls between us. Just us. There is no us, Ethan." His shoulders dropped. "You left me." "I did," I said, then I paused. Letting the silence linger between us, he looked down, like the words had struck him physically. "Was it really that easy for you?" "No," I said softly. "It was hard, it was painful, it was humiliating. But the moment I saw you with her, laughing like I had never existed, it became very easy to choose myself." He stepped forward. "I didn't laugh because I was happy. I laughed because I was trying to forget how badly I'd messed everything up." I raised a hand to stop him. "Don't rewrite history. You enjoyed that trip. I planned it out of love. You used it to relive a lie." There was silence between us. Then he said something I didn't expect. "She's pregnant." I blinked. "She told me this morning." He added, eyes searching mine. "I'm still processing it. I don't know. I just thought you should know." I stared at him for a long moment. Then, to my own surprise, I laughed. It wasn't cruel or bitter. It was just funny. Funnier than it had any right to be. "You think it's funny?" "I think it's perfect," I said calmly, "because now, you get to raise a child with the woman you replaced me with, and I get to board a flight tomorrow and never think of you again. You're leaving, for Geneva, then Marrakesh, then Singapore. There's a conference. I'm the keynote speaker." His eyes widened. "You're the keynote." I smiled. "They don't invite ex-girlfriends, Ethan. They invite chairwomen." He lowered his gaze. "Leah, I know it's too late, but if there's anything I can do." "There is," I said, already turning toward the door. "You can check out tomorrow, quietly, and never come back." The morning after Ethan dropped the pregnancy bomb, I woke before dawn. The sky outside was still purple, melting into that soft orange glow that always comes just before sunrise. Barefoot and wrapped in a silk robe, I stood on my balcony, watching the tide roll in. The ocean was calm, unaware of the wreckage it mirrored. I didn't feel pain. I didn't feel rage. I felt nothing, and it was the best kind of nothing. The kind that signals space has finally been made for something new. I packed light. A few outfits, my laptop, and the black heels I'd worn to the shareholder meeting. The rest could wait. I left behind everything else. Things that still smelled like memories or belonged to a version of me I didn't recognize anymore. I didn't notify the staff about my departure until I was halfway to the airport. I sent Taika a voice message. "Don't worry, I've approved next month's budget. You're in charge while I'm gone. Tell Anna I'm proud of her." She messaged back immediately, "Leaving for good?" "No," I replied, "just for peace." My destination was the private island I used to joke about going to when things got too loud in my life. I never actually believed I'd go, but now it was waiting for me like an open page. The jet touched down mid-morning. A jeep picked me up from the airstrip and drove me along a quiet, tree-lined path that opened to a small villa perched on a cliffside. Everything was white stone and glass with soft wood tones. Simple, elegant, nothing flashy. It was the opposite of everything Ethan used to like. I stepped inside and found fresh orchids on the table, a breakfast tray on the patio, and a note from the manager. "Dear Madam Bennett, welcome to your sanctuary. We hope this place helps you breathe deeply again." I took a deep breath. It did. I spent the first day doing nothing. No calls, no screens, no schedule. I just let the silence stretch across the hours like a soft blanket. That night, I stood on the balcony. The stars spread above like a scattered promise. I thought of my mother's voice once telling me, "One day you'll learn that love doesn't always come in grand moments. Sometimes it's in choosing yourself over someone who makes you feel small." She had been right. By the third day, I finally opened my email again. There were dozens of unread messages, corporate updates, media requests, a few speaking invitations, and tucked quietly in between, one name I hadn't expected, Jameson Wu, editor at Modern Impact magazine. The subject line read, "Would you be open to telling your story?" He wrote that he'd heard whispers about a young executive who had quietly donated a luxury honeymoon package to a military couple and then disappeared from the spotlight. He wanted to feature the invisible woman behind the world's most luxurious experience. I closed the email and smiled. I wasn't invisible anymore. 2 weeks later, the article was published, "The Woman Who Vanished with Grace." The subtitle read, "How a Forgotten Girlfriend Became the Hospitality World's Quiet Revolution." The piece didn't mention Ethan or MIA, but it mentioned the trip, the sudden disappearance, the professional rise, the quiet power. It went viral, not for scandal, but for strength. That's when Ethan came back. Not physically, but digitally. He tried everything, emails, blocked numbers, anonymous comments on posts, each one more desperate than the last. "Please, Leah. You don't know how much I've changed. I'm not even with her anymore. I still have the ring. I saw the article. You looked beautiful." I ignored them all, except the last one. To that one, I replied, "I wasn't trying to look beautiful. I was just being myself, something you never appreciated when I was yours." Then I blocked him for good. The next day, I received flowers from a sender marked as anonymous. Inside was a note, "I hope you're still watching the stars." I threw the flowers away. By the time I returned to the resort, things had changed. Anna had been promoted, Taika had installed a new training system, and guest satisfaction was at an all-time high. More importantly, my name was no longer whispered behind doors or mentioned with caution. I had become a symbol not of heartbreak but of power. One afternoon as I walked through the garden, a guest approached me, a woman in her 40s, with a soft smile and a sun hat in hand. "You're the one who gave my daughter and her husband their honeymoon," she said gently. I nodded. "She didn't tell me until after," she continued, "said she didn't want to make a fuss. But I wanted to thank you. You gave them more than a trip. You gave them a memory they'll carry forever." I didn't know what to say. I just placed my hand over my heart and smiled. She added, "It's rare to see someone use pain to grow instead of destroy." That night, I cried for the first time since leaving Ethan, not because I missed him, but because I didn't. 3 days after I returned to the resort, a formal invitation arrived from the International Hospitality Awards Committee. I had been nominated for Excellence in Quiet Leadership, a title that felt oddly perfect. The awards were being held in Paris at the same hotel chain where my parents had started their careers decades ago. It was a full-circle moment I hadn't expected to come so soon. But when I read the list of confirmed speakers and saw the audience list, executives, press, industry giants, I felt calm. This time, I wasn't representing someone else's success, I was standing there as myself. I sent my RSVP that afternoon. By evening, news had spread among the corporate circles. My phone buzzed non-stop with congratulatory messages, calls, and requests for interviews, and buried between them was another name. MIA. Her message was simple: I think we need to talk before Paris. Woman to woman, I stared at the screen for a long time. I didn't reply, but I didn't delete it either. 2 days later, she showed up at the resort uninvited, found at the front gate wearing oversized sunglasses and a scarf, as if disguises could change history. She says it's personal, Taika said. Looking uncomfortable, wants to speak to you alone, said, you'd understand. I sighed. Bring her to the staff tea room. Not the garden, not the lounge. And definitely not anywhere guests can see her. The tea room was modest, lined with bare wood, a few plants, and clean cushions. Nothing fancy. It was the only room in the resort where I allowed myself to be ordinary. MIA looked nervous when she walked in. She pulled off her sunglasses, revealing dark circles and slightly puffy eyes. Her expression wasn't smug or performative this time. It was tired. Thanks for agreeing, she said softly. I didn't, I replied, sitting down. But you're here anyway. She gave a weak smile, still sharp. I guess I deserved that. I didn't answer. I waited. She sat across from me, fidgeting with her bracelet. I wanted to say I'm sorry, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. For stealing my vacation or for stealing the man who I built it for? I asked. My tone flat. Both, all of it. Her shoulders slumped. I wasn't supposed to fall for him again. I swear, when he invited me, I thought maybe he just wanted closure. And then he said the trip was a gift from him, that he planned it. My jaw clenched, but I remained silent. He made it sound like he had finally moved on from you. She continued. He even told me you were busy chasing corporate fame and didn't care about romance anymore. I believed him. You always believed what you wanted, I said, my tone even. MIA didn't argue. I didn't come here to be forgiven. I just wanted you to hear it from me. He's not with me anymore. We're not together. That's between you and him, I said, leaning back. Why bring it to me? Because he's been calling you again, and he keeps saying he wants to make things right, that he still loves you. I raised an eyebrow. Let me guess. He told you that while you were still together. She nodded. Yes, he used to text you when I was asleep. I saw them. He doesn't know I know. That did not surprise me, but it still left a bitter taste in my mouth. I wanted to warn you, she added. Because you might still have feelings. Don't finish that sentence, I said sharply. You don't get to tell me what I feel. She nodded quickly. Sorry. A silence fell between us. Then she added very quietly, I found out I'm not pregnant. It was a false alarm. I didn't lie on purpose. I really thought I was. Did he know? I narrowed my eyes. No, she said. He still doesn't know. I didn't want to tell him until I was sure. But now I won't. I stood slowly, smoothing my skirt. MIA. I hope you heal, truly. But I'm not your confidant. I'm not your therapist. I'm not part of your mess anymore. She looked up at me with red eyes. So that's it. You just close the book and walk away. No, I said gently. I read the last page and moved on to a better story. She didn't follow me out. And I didn't look back. On the flight to Paris, I wore my quietest power, a long black coat, gold-accented heels, no makeup except a berry-tinted lip. My suitcase was small, my eyes focused. The venue was stunning. Glass chandeliers, velvet carpet, everything built to impress. But as I walked the halls, I realized I wasn't intimidated. I belonged here. My speech was scheduled near the end of the gala. By the time I stepped on stage, the room had grown quiet. They expected to see a polished executive with boardroom language. Instead, they got me. I'm not going to speak about metrics today, I began, or about profits or logistics. I want to talk about something most business schools don't teach, the strength of disappearing. Heads tilted, pens paused. Sometimes, I said, you don't need to fight loudly to win. Sometimes, walking away from something toxic is the loudest power move you'll ever make. I saw nods in the crowd. I planned a vacation once. A beautiful one. Personalized menus, private chefs, custom views. But I didn't go, someone else did. And for a while, I thought I had lost something. A hush settled. But now I know, I didn't lose a trip, I lost a weight I was never meant to carry, and in return, I found myself. The applause was soft at first, then louder and louder. By the time I walked off stage, I knew something had shifted, not just for them, but for me. Later that night, I stood on the rooftop bar overlooking Paris. The city lights below shimmered like 1,000 tiny hopes, and somewhere in that moment, I let it all go. Every doubt, every betrayal, every ghost that still whispered I wasn't enough. I raised a glass to no one in particular, to the woman I used to be, I whispered, and then with a small smile, to the woman I became when she finally stopped waiting for someone to choose her. When I flew back home after the awards in Paris, I expected peace. A soft landing, quiet mornings with jasmine tea and ocean breezes. Instead, I was met at the airport by someone I hadn't seen in years, Ethan's mother. She stood near the arrivals gate in a conservative coat, holding a small paper bag and a hesitant look. Her hair was shorter now, streaked with silver. Her eyes, the same ones Ethan used to have, watched me with something between hope and guilt. I could have walked past, pretended I didn't see her, but I paused. She approached cautiously. "Lee, I know I have no right, but I needed to speak to you." I stayed still. She offered the bag. "It's nothing big, just your favorite walnut cookies. I remembered you used to eat them when you were stressed." The scent reached me, faintly sweet, warm, familiar. "I can't stay long," I said, taking it politely. She nodded. "That's fair." I didn't invite her to sit, but she stayed anyway. "I heard about Paris," she said softly. "Congratulations. The article was beautiful. Your speech was stronger than anything I've ever witnessed," she said, pausing to search my face intently. "You've changed." "I had to," I replied. Another pause filled the air. "He's not doing well," she continued, her tone cautious, making it clear she wasn't trying to induce guilt, just expressing concern. I remained silent as she went on. "He quit his job, sold his condo, and tried to launch some half-baked startup. He burned through his savings. I think he thought it would impress you." I raised an eyebrow, and if it had, she lowered her head, her voice a murmur. "He thought success might repair what he damaged. But I keep telling him what he broke wasn't just a relationship. It was trust, and trust can't be rebuilt with business logos and pitch decks." I almost smiled at the simplicity of her summary. She hesitated again. "He doesn't know I'm here, and I won't tell him, but I needed you to know. I regret not protecting you more. You were never just the girlfriend. You were family." Something in my chest twisted, not from pain, but recognition of the mother-daughter bond that had once felt real. The Sunday lunches, the inside jokes, the way she used to pat my hand whenever Ethan acted selfish. "You did what mothers do," I said quietly. "You protected your son." Her eyes welled up with tears. "And I lost a daughter." She reached into her coat and pulled out a small envelope. "This isn't from Ethan, it's from me." I don't expect a reply, but these are all the things I should have said before. I accepted the envelope. She stepped back slowly, her eyes still glassy. "You don't have to forgive him, or me, but I hope you find someone who never makes you question your worth again." Then she turned and walked away. I stood still for a long time after that, the bag of cookies warm in my hands. That night, I didn't open the envelope. Instead, I took a long bath, lit a lavender candle, and scrolled through pictures from Paris. One photo caught my attention. It was taken by someone else. Clearly, I was laughing mid-sentence, my head tilted back. Not posed, just real. I saved it to my favorites. Then I opened my inbox. Among the congratulations and corporate requests, there was a message flagged as internal. It was from our Singapore properties PR director. "Met a consultant today for the green energy audit. He asked if you were related to the Lee Bennett who gave that Paris speech. Turns out he saw it live. He asked if it would be inappropriate to send flowers. I told him, you appreciate honesty more than flattery. Hope that's still true." Attached was a name, Dr. Ryan K. No last name, no message. Just that. I smiled. A week later, I flew to Singapore for a site inspection. Romance wasn't on my to-do list, but I still wore my nicest flats and picked a blouse that made my eyes stand out. Professional, yes, but open. Ryan was tall, quiet, and easy to talk to. He didn't compliment my looks, he complimented my operational structure. "The way you handle interdepartmental morale is elegant and tactical," he said. "Elegant and tactical," I repeated with a small laugh. "That's the first time I've been called both." He smiled. "You make strong look graceful. Not many people do." We talked for 20 minutes longer than necessary. About travel, culture, about things that didn't need fixing. He didn't ask about my past, I didn't ask about his. It felt like two adults meeting each other exactly where they were, without expectation or pressure. Before he left, he handed me a folded card with a personal number inside. "If you ever want to talk about sustainability, or just need a recommendation for rooftop jazz spots," he said with a crooked smile. I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no. I just tucked the card into my notebook next to my passport. Back at the resort, life returned to a quiet rhythm: emails, meetings, walks by the beach. One morning, Anna knocked on my door. "There's a new family checking in," she said, "and the wife is 8 months pregnant. She's a nurse, he's in the military." I thought for a moment, then nodded. "Put them in the executive suite, sunset view and dinner, private table, oceanfront." She smiled. "Already done." I leaned back in my chair. Somewhere, in another version of this story, I might have been the woman at 8 months with a man who didn't deserve to be a father. In a life I would have regretted forever. But that wasn't my story anymore. Mine was filled with rebuilt peace, quiet power, and the kind of joy that doesn't need to be posted online to be real. It had been almost 2 months since Ethan's last message. I hadn't heard from him or MIA. The gossip faded. The posts stopped. It was as if they had both evaporated from my timeline and from my life, until I walked into the conference center ballroom in Geneva and saw him sitting in the back row. At first, I thought it was someone who looked like him. The same dark jacket, the same slouched shoulders. But when our eyes met just for a second, I knew it was him. He wasn't supposed to be there. The event was invitation only, and he wasn't in the hospitality field. His name wasn't on the list of approved guests. But somehow, he was there, and worse, he waited until the QA session to stand up and speak, not to ask a question, not to offer insight, but to address me directly. "Lee," he said into the microphone, ignoring the formalities, "I know this isn't the time or the place, but I need you to hear this." The room shifted, heads turned, whispers fluttered like moths. I held my expression perfectly still. Ethan's voice cracked. "I lost you. I know that. I've tried everything to be someone worth standing beside. But nothing I do matters if I can't apologize publicly for everything I ruined." Someone in the front row tried to hush him. An organizer motioned for a security guard to approach, but I raised my hand. "Let him finish," I said it. A hush swept across the room, soft gasps rippling like waves. Ethan stood there, looking both relieved and utterly exposed. His voice trembled as he spoke. "I took something beautiful," he said, eyes locked on mine, "and I gave it to someone who didn't even value it. I lied, I cheated, I disrespected the best thing I ever had, and it took losing you to realize. I never deserved you in the first place." He turned slowly to face the audience. "You're all looking at the most composed, brilliant woman in this room," he continued, "but what you don't see is the woman I knew, the one who stayed up late organizing charity drives, who left handwritten thank you notes for cafe staff she liked, who believed that planning a surprise trip for someone was the purest form of love." His voice cracked, "and I destroyed that." Silence settled like dust, a few murmurs. One soft boo, then he turned back to me. "I know you'll never come back," he said. "I just needed to say it, out loud, in front of everyone. I'm sorry." He handed the microphone back and sat down, eyes lowered. The moderator glanced at me, visibly unsure how to proceed. I stood, not hurriedly, not dramatically, just steady. "I didn't ask for that," I said, my voice clear and calm, filling the space he had left behind. "But I'll accept it, not because it changes anything, it doesn't. But because sometimes, acknowledging pain is the final step to leaving it behind." Soft applause followed. Not for him, but for me. I glanced at Ethan. For the first time in years, I saw something unfamiliar in his eyes. Respect, but it no longer meant anything. Later, as the crowd thinned and guests mingled beneath the low hum of music and conversation, I felt someone approach behind me. "Thank you," Ethan said quietly, "for not humiliating me, I turned, taking a slow sip of my wine. You did that all by yourself, I replied. He gave a half smile, still sharp, still learning. You're really done, aren't you? He asked. I was done, I said, the day I stopped needing answers. He nodded slowly. Emma moved back home. She's teaching yoga now. I raised an eyebrow. Sounds peaceful. It is, he said, but it's not you. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I saw your interview last week, he added, the one where they called you hospitality's quiet force. You looked like a woman who no longer waits for permission to take up space. That's because I am, I said simply. He stepped back, his gaze softening. Goodbye, Leah. This time, he didn't try to hug me. He didn't beg for another chance. He just turned and walked away. No dramatics, no turning back, and for that, I was grateful. The next day, I stood on stage in a packed conference hall, full of decision-makers, visionaries, and CEOs. I delivered my keynote without interruption. I spoke of rebuilding, of respect, of how true leadership isn't about being the loudest voice in the room, but about showing up with consistency, presence, and integrity. They gave me a standing ovation when I finished, but I didn't feel proud because of the applause. I felt proud because, for the first time, I wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone, not to Ethan, not to MIA, not to anyone in that room. I was finally just myself, and that was enough. On the flight home, I found Ryan's card still tucked in the back of my notebook, the one he'd given me in Singapore. I hadn't called, I hadn't needed to, but something about the silence between us felt unfinished, so I sent a text, still offering rooftop jazz spots. The reply came minutes later. Only for award-winning chairwomen. I smiled. I didn't know what this would be. I wasn't rushing. I wasn't expecting a fairy tale, but this time, there was no drama, no tests, no noise. This was peace. Thank you for watching today's story. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, so feel free to share your opinions, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more great stories. We'll see you in the next video.